there, my name's Jill Tiny. I'm from Collaboration Global, and this is our podcast, Being Human, Hidden Depths. I'm going to be interviewing some of our members from Collaboration Global, and they're going to be sharing with you their extraordinary lives. Although they would probably believe they're just normal, everyday, average humans, but they are extraordinary. A bit like you and me, we all have our story to tell. We've all been through difficult times, and we've come out the other end having learned an extraordinary amount about ourselves that we can share with others. So I think you'll find lots of things that will resonate with where you've been in your journey as well. I look forward to seeing you on the other side. Hello there, and welcome to our podcast with Collaboration Global. And I'm really delighted to say that my guest today on this rather grey, rainy afternoon is the wonderful, sunny Gina Gardiner. Welcome, Gina. Lovely to have you with us today.
Thank you very much, and what a lovely welcome. Yes, it is a bit grim today, isn't it?
The sun is shining behind the clouds. We have to remind ourselves that it hasn't gone away. It's just there. It's just there's a few clouds in the way. So I had a friend...
The most amazing rainbow, didn't we, on Tuesday?
Oh my goodness,
fabulous
yes.
Rainbow too.
We should post that onto the Facebook group, shouldn't we? That would be fun to pop it up there. Everyone was taking photos. It was so intense, the colour. It just kind of stopped everything that was going on just so we could admire Mother Nature. It was wonderful. So in our series of extraordinary, ordinary people, you and I would look at each other and go, well, I think you're amazing. No, I think you're amazing. No, you're incredible. No, you're incredible. Because we look at ourselves generally, everybody, as like, well, I haven't done very much in this world. Where in reality, we've all got some genius that we think is natural. We think is, everyone's got that, but they don't. And you are an epitome of that, Gina. If you look on paper, the things that you have done in your lifetime, I totally inspired by your work ethic, your resilience, your determination. There's like nothing that's going to hold you back. So hopefully you'll tell us one or two of those stories as we go along so we can share. But first and foremost, how did you come to Collaboration Global, and what is it that kind of makes you go, oh, this is a place I'd like to hang out? What inspires you there?
One of my clients, my business clients who I've been working with in the long term, he probably mentioned you and your organisation probably a couple of years before I decided to come. Some of that was logistics, but and I became more and more interested in, because he talked about it in terms of a networking group initially, and I made the assumption, quite wrongly as it turns out, networking group and the usual, and there are many which I won't name, and so I just dismissed it as another networking group. But the more we spoke about how within that group he found it incredibly supportive, not my experience of the networking groups that I'd been to, and how there was a core which looked at values and growing yourself personally, and my work is all around personal empowerment and transformational leadership. So I became more and more interested in what was going on here. And it was always in rushed conversations, just as we were going, I'm going to the meeting, and I think, so what are you going to look at today? And so we decided that we would go out for lunch and have a conversation. And he talked about collaboration in a way that we'd talked about it in a business sense within the context of the strategic development of his business and having collaboration within the business. But he was talking about collaboration between businesses. And for me, that was so refreshing, because so many people are fearful of lack that they go into competition mode.
Yes.
And, well, I don't want to do this, and I won't mention anything to them because they might nick my idea. That I thought I'd go and see it myself.
Right.
So I turned up to a meeting in Essex. The speaker of the day I found inspirational. The structure, which was, well, I'm not going to call it a networking meeting, because although inevitably networking happens,
yeah,
it's like comparing a hyena with a goldfish.
Yeah.
And so I decided to join.
Yeah.
And over the time, and I've been a member now probably about 16 or 17 months,
Yeah.
what I recognized is that here is a collection of people very different, from
Massively
all
different.
sorts of different business backgrounds and personal backgrounds, but the core of having the same values and having the opportunity to examine those values, which most people don't,
Yep.
and get perspective from the whole group about what that means for them. So what's really interesting for me is throughout the session, the 3-hour session, you can see light bulbs going off around the room and have your own light bulb moments in a way that you come away. And for me, I see it as an opportunity to fill my batteries.
Ah, that's lovely.
I mean, I
Yeah.
do a lot of work with people where I'm giving.
Yes.
And so for me, it's an opportunity. And I'd like to think that I give within the group as well.
Absolutely.
But I also come away from it feeling enriched, feel as if I've been fed.
Well, what's lovely is that there's a lot of people that come to meetings like that and feel like that they know everything and they can share everything and they can, oh, I'll teach you and I'll help you. And actually you're a person that probably does know an awful lot about some of the topics that we talk about. But the fact that you say you're going to be fed as well, it shows that you've got this open mind of going, well, what am I going to take? What am I going to learn? What's going to help me? As well as being present and helping other people in the room. So I think that's absolutely lovely that you feel.
I mean, our background for both of us started in education.
Yes.
And I believe passionately that the teacher who thinks that they know it all, it's time to retire.
Yeah.
And the feeding isn't only from what goes on at the front of the room.
Yes.
It's in terms of the conversations. I mean, people who don't know collaboration global will not be aware of the structure, that people who speak at one meeting then offer a free mastermind the following week and following month. And the themes and the topics are eclectic, to say the least.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so you can go and find out about something that you have no knowledge of, or you can go to something that you think you know about and find new stuff. And one of the case in point, this week we were talking about LinkedIn and making the best of LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So it's for me, and it's quite hard to describe in the sense it's so multi-layered.
Yeah.
It can be the chance conversation over a cup of coffee where somebody says, how you doing? And you say, well, I'm struggling with this. And they say, either I can help, or you need to speak to so-and-so. Or somebody has noticed something you've done or notices that, that perhaps you're having a struggle. For me, technology is always at the bottom of my struggles. And that there's somebody there who, even if they can't help, can say to you, do you know what? It's okay.
Yes, because they're struggling too. So you've got empathy as well. So you're allowed to, if you're talking about networking, we all walk through a networking door and the door opens and we're like, everything is fine. I'm okay. We're at Collaboration Global and you walk through the door and you're allowed to go, oh, I've had such a bad week. Oh, really? What's wrong? What can I? And it's
not a moan shop. And I think because in so many places I've been to, that people come in and they use it as a dumping ground. That they'll come in and they're all of this spews forward, and you end up. I was a head teacher for 21 years, and I'd go to a head teachers meeting, and until I took control of how I was going to respond to it, I'd go away from those meetings, which tended to be moan shops, feeling depressed. Until I learned to say, stop.
Yeah.
If you're presenting the problem and we're going to look for a solution, great. But I'll come later. Yeah. If you just want to moan, that's fine. I don't want to be part of that.
Yeah, do it on your own time.
And so I want it to be really clear. This is not a place where people go and dump.
No.
And people where it's safe to be vulnerable.
Yes.
And at the same time, know that there are people there who care.
And also will challenge you on things. Yes. So if you're having we had one guy that was, I don't talk to my dad. And we're like, by the end of that meeting, I don't know if you were at that meeting over in Essex, there were about 4 people. When we were talking about what did you get out of the meeting, what did you get out of the meeting, they were saying, I think it's time for him to go and talk to his dad. And he was like, all right. But it nudged him in the right direction, and it helped him to heal part of his relationship with his father. So you don't expect that in a business meeting. You don't expect that to, have you given people permission for that challenge? Well, within the Collaboration Global community, you expect to be to have a look at yourself as well as what you're learning. So it's not just about learning business stuff, which is fantastic and it's great, but it's also learning stuff about yourself. And that's why
I think you can separate it, because you are the common denominator wherever you are, whether this is family, business, your personal, your life with your friends or whatever. But I think in terms of challenge, one of the things that I've watched it do for people, and at times for me, although as you say, I'm very familiar, particularly with the values that are like Brighton Rock through your organisation, they resonate so significantly with my own, is that it challenges perceptions, but it's not about I'm right, you're wrong.
No. And
in so many business arenas, it is about who's the rightest of us all.
Yeah, good expression.
And people, in the first instance, often just accept that it's different. But what I've found as I've become a longer term member is that people who when we looked at values when I first joined, who had perhaps quite a direct and this is my view, when it's revisited, how their view has shifted.
Yeah.
Not in the meeting, but over time, and how they have opened up. And for me, it's like watching a flower blossom, and people have the confidence to speak, the confidence to say, actually, I don't agree with that. This is what I think and why. But later on to say, that's what I used to think, but I've moved on.
Do you know what? Sometimes I 100% agree, and it's beautiful to watch, but sometimes people don't even remember what they were like originally. And you can say to them, do you remember when you first stood up at the front of the room and you were really shaking and you were really nervous and you thought you were going to throw up because it was such a big deal? And now they're like, did I? Really? And they've forgotten. In the space of a few short months, they now do it so naturally that, it doesn't even cross their mind not to be at the front of the room and having a conversation and sharing and explaining their thought process and why they think the way they think, because they feel safe, because they don't feel that anyone's going to go, so what? Oh, that's ridiculous. What are you talking about? That's not going to happen. Which in a lot of spaces, that people feel they have to justify their existence by putting somebody else down.
The other thing I'd like to say about safe, and I think it's important to make the distinction, that many people like to stay within their comfort zone. They feel it's safe.
Yeah.
But actually that safety can very easily become a straitjacket that stops you growing, developing and thinking.
Makes you shrink, totally.
And I think it's important to identify that this is a dynamic safety where there is the opportunity for you to expand, try things out and know that nobody's going to laugh at you. People may challenge your thinking and ask you why, but that helps you refine your thinking. And often, 95% of what we say or do is habitual. So often initially what gets trotted out is the habitual response. And when somebody says, so why? Then you can watch people go, is that what I think? But they haven't, it's not past their conscious mind, but it's a safe place to actually have that shift of thinking.
And then, of course, the final piece of the jigsaw puzzle is, well, now you're thinking that in a different perspective, in a different context, what are you going to do about it?
Absolutely.
Like, oh, okay. And then it's like, and who's going to keep you accountable?
I was just about to say, as a group, they also will keep you accountable.
Yeah.
And if you say you're going to do something, then there is the opportunity within the organisation for that to happen. And I know your online groups, you can sign up to put what you want to do on a Monday, what you are saying you're going to do on a Monday, and to give you progress during the week and to celebrate what you've done, and if there's been a problem, that people are there to help. So again, it's so multi-layered, and it's very hard, I think, on when you're talking to people to actually encapsulate that in
Yeah.
an efficient way.
Yes, it's hard, and people say that to us. You know, how do we how are we supposed to tell people about it? And I'm like, just give them your experience and what you're feeling is. That it's the feeling. And some people go, just makes me feel nice and cozy, and it just makes me feel warm, and it makes me feel brave, and it makes me feel stronger, and whatever it is, it's the feeling that you kind of get when you walk through the door. Makes you
And
feel welcome.
I'm sure for people who come for the first time, who perhaps if they come with a view that this is going to be a networking meeting,
Bit of a
the
shock.
probably initial thing is what the blazes is going on, because it is different.
Yes.
But certainly the people that I've met, that, and it'll be the ones that it's right for,
Yep.
by the end of the meeting, they recognise that this is a space that they want to be part of.
Yeah.
And
Definitely.
if it's not the right time or not the right place for other people, then that's also fine. But I would say to anybody listening to this, before you knock it, give it a go.
Well, it's like life, really. You have to give it a go, don't you? I didn't intend this to be a one-woman sales pitch for Collaboration Global, but thank you very much.
You're
But
very welcome.
just to illustrate, let me get my glasses. There's kind of we were meant to meet. We were meant to become friends, because even before you came to Collaboration Global, you had written a book. This is the book, and I was reading it the other day. And one of the things that there's right at the back on page 200 of Thriving, Not Surviving, we are all one, being of service. And you've put, if you don't mind me reading out.
Oh, lovely.
We're all connected. The decisions we make, the actions we take or fail to take, all have an impact on the people we know, the rest of mankind, and on the world in which we live. Every act of kindness, however small, is significant. If the human race is to thrive, rather than simply survive, we must learn to enjoy our similarities and celebrate diversity. Many far more erudite people than I have captured the essence of unity and oneness and its importance. And it says, Bonnie L. Oscarson said, we must stop concentrating on our differences and look for what we have in common. Then we can begin to realize our greatest potential and achieve the greatest good in the world. Now, that is what I've always said. You know, when you come to one of our meetings, I'll stand at the front of the room and say, we don't care how tall you are, short you are, fat you are, thin you are, black you are, white you are, what sexual orientation, what ability, disability. We thrive in diversity, and that's our world. Our world is different. Vive la différence. But it's about connecting. It's about having that connection together, realizing we're all human beings. And we're human beings before we're anything else, before we're a mother or a daughter or a friend, or we're human beings first. And if we don't connect and support with humanity around the world, it's, you know, where's it going to take us? We're on a hiding to nothing. We're on a destruction path. And we have to remember the only people that's going to help us is us. And we have to make that difference. And when I read that here in this book, and then obviously it goes on to talk about random acts of kindness. And also, I have faith, the last one, I have faith there will come a time when we can all live in harmony, celebrating our differences as well as our similarities. And that is exactly what Collaboration Global is about, is bringing people together to connect, collaborate and grow. So tell us about this book. What prompted you to start writing that, and what's your message from that whole book if somebody wants to go out and buy that one?
It's not my first book. I'd written some business books, and the previous book of that ilk before that was called Chariots on Fire.
Good one.
It was sharing some of my story, and how, and for those who don't know my story, I had a serious ski accident in 1983, and to cut a very long story short, I became the head teacher or principal of a very large junior school very soon afterwards, had 2 failed back surgeries and learnt to walk twice as an adult. And I ran my school for the most part from a wheelchair.
Tough.
Now, the huge gift in that, and I have to say there were some pretty deadly days,
yeah.
the huge gift in that was I had to, if I wanted my school to be successful, which I did, and I was determined that the pupils and the staff would have the very best learning opportunities that I could create, I had to find a different way of developing personal potential and the potential of the team to empower themselves and the children. And because I couldn't physically get into my classrooms,
Wow.
I had to find a way of doing that where people took radical responsibility for their own performance and a shared responsibility for the performance of other people. It was very, very successful. We were on the 100 best schools list from HMI twice during my tenure. That's 100 schools in the country. We were one of the first 75 beacon schools. We got lots of kite marks. And I realised, well, two things. Firstly, I recognised that if I'd been able-bodied, I probably wouldn't have come up with it.
Oh, it's interesting, isn't it?
I suspect that I would have been too interfering.
Yeah.
But also, when I left headship in 2004, and I thought, what am I going to do now? I'm not ready for daytime TV. And I looked at my skill set and my experience, and I'd worked for the DFES, for the government as an advisor, and I'd worked for the National College and the Institute, the National College of Leadership and the London Institute as a trainer, facilitator and coach. And done all sorts of roles outside school to bring a budget into school, to be quite honest, because we had a very poor budget, not all at the same time. I took myself off to do a research project to look at, were the issues that we faced in education the same in businesses? And the research project was across a wide range of industries. And of course it was. And so I wrote the first two business books, Kickstart Your Career and Manage Your Staff More Effectively. And I started to work mainly with corporates, always done life and relationship coaching, even when I was a head. And I worked in corporates until 2009, when the recession hit. And in January 2009, I lost all my contracts in a week. Because the corporates had just eradicated their training and development budget because they were fearful.
Yeah. Wow.
By that time, I was doing some lecturing for Essex University Business School as a visiting lecturer, and they would commission me out to companies, not corporates, but business, SMEs, to go and do something, to run a communication course or whatever. And I'd often go, and they'd say, I'd always talk to, it was always with the senior decision makers, and talk to them, and very quickly realised that what they'd commissioned wasn't what they needed. So I would say to them, I'm very happy to run this. However, actually, I think that what you need is this. So I'll give you an example. I was brought in to work with a big hotel, and they wanted a course on communication. But actually, they had a general manager who was stealing from them.
Oh, wow.
They had staff that were dysfunctional and not trained. And they thought that having a course in communication was going to solve things. So anyway, to cut a long story short, I started to work with businesses on a sustained basis. So that we could avoid the problems. And at about that same time, this is a very long story for a very short question. About that same time, I've always practiced what I preach, and my coach at the time, we were talking about what I was going to do. And she said, well, have you thought about writing a book? And I said, what about? And she said, your story. There's a lot in your story and the principles that you use that would be helpful. And so I wrote Chariots on Fire. Go back to headship. While I was a head, I had a very, very strong sense of purpose, which was completely and utterly satisfied. I was helping, and I felt that what I was doing was really of value. When I started working with smaller numbers of people, I absolutely took on board the value of what I was doing with them, but I got a stronger and stronger sense that there were more people that needed help. And that started to become more and more uncomfortable. What are you doing? Actually, there's so many people out there. I mean, the statistics are scary. Half the prescriptions in the UK are for antidepressants. The most common reason for men dying under the age of 42 is suicide. The cost of days absence because of stress, £70 billion a year.
Who measures this stuff? Wow.
The trades people in the government. And so that sense of purpose became bigger and bigger. And so I decided that I got to listen, because it was getting so uncomfortable. And I set up a new company called Genuinely You, and started to develop initially a presence, because I'd not done anything on the internet. I'm very fortunate that the last sort of 12 years, I hadn't had to market myself at all. Everything was by recommendation, word of mouth. And I realized if I was going to get to more people, I couldn't do it one-on-one. I had to use the internet, and I had to use programs that people could access, perhaps with support, but not all one-on-one. And I'd started to develop this, and the coach that I was working with and still work with, who's done a lot of the marketing and the technical stuff, said, you need to write another book, because from what we're talking about, you've developed the thinking of Chariots on Fire. Things have moved on, and you need to reflect that. So I agreed in the middle of May 2017 to write the book. 2 days later, he emailed me and said, I've pre-published it on Amazon. Your book needs to be published by the 27th, or the latest, the 28th of September.
Oh, wow.
And if you don't, they'll take down all of your other books.
No.
I've told him that if he ever does that again, I'll murder him.
Yes. Oh my goodness. That's an
I
incentive
wrote
for you.
Thriving, Not Surviving, the 5 Secret Pathways to Happiness, Success and Fulfillment. And the reason for writing it in that way is, it didn't matter whether people came personally, professionally, or as a relationship, we covered the 5 pathways, which are beliefs, relationships, success and how you define it and how you manage it, whether you self-sabotage, managing change and transition and the choices you make, and finding your true purpose and fulfillment. So the book, if you like, is the hook that my personal programs and my newly launched Enlightened Leadership program get hung on.
Yeah.
It's the bedrock, it's the principles on which those are based.
And all of those principles are what you've found for yourself as you've gone through your journey with your teaching, as well as the corporate stuff, as well as the SME stuff.
So they're principles that I live by.
Yeah.
I walk my talk, occasionally fall off the path, get back on there as quickly as I can. And there are principles and strategies that I've used with great success with large numbers of individuals, teams, and whole organisations.
So what is your dream now then, apart from obviously to get more and more people to understand about this, but in your life and where you stand, you know, beyond your wildest dreams, what would you love to see?
My mission is, within the next 5 years, to positively impact on 1 million people, but to do that through developing enlightened leadership.
Right.
Because if you're the lead, well, you can't lead effectively and in an enlightened way unless you lead yourself.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter whether you're talking about leading within your family, or whether your team, your whole organization, whether you're talking about societal level. We've got to do something different. 100%. We have to lead, and for me, it's about leading with integrity. And there seems to be a huge shortage of that. Leading with compassion. And for me, compassion is an action. It's not a for you. It's how you behave, how you speak to people, how you treat yourself. Yeah. And also to have the courage to do what's right, not what's expedient. And so often, particularly, I think, those people who are facing change, and change has never been, I don't think we've ever faced a time in history where change is so fast and so all-encompassing. And if leaders think that they're going to be able to do it all themselves, you know, the leaders whose delegation style is, I'll do it myself because at least I know it's done properly.
Yeah, I think I'm guilty of that.
There are so many who are burnt out and overwhelmed because it's just too big.
Yeah.
But for me, even more important than that, or just as important, is the waste of potential.
Yes.
Because people don't feel they have ownership of the agenda. They're not given the opportunity. not their potential's not recognized, in fact anything but. And that's one of the reasons I think that there's so much depression, anxiety and stress, is that you've got overwhelmed leaders who are trying to be more profitable, and they think that they do that by being bullish about the way in which they work with people. My experience now from working with many organizations is that if you work in an enlightened way, productivity goes up, profitability goes up, relationships are improved, and people have better work-life balance.
And it's a better quality of life as well, because you're going into an environment that you want to be part of. I was having a chat with somebody, it might have been this morning actually, or yesterday, about the corporate world, which something I didn't realise is that when you get promoted in the corporate world, everyone is kind of trying desperately to get promoted for this golden nugget of a good salary. Even if they know they can't do it or they're not capable of it, if they can blag their way into that job, and then it's realised that actually you've had these appraisals, but you're not hitting the mark, you shouldn't really be doing it. They ask them to step down, but they still keep the salary.
Good gracious, I didn't know that either.
Now, I don't know if this is across the board, but this is the experience of this chap that I was talking to. So I said, so he's got every incentive to go for stuff he knows he can't do, because he's going to keep that salary and then be in a cushy little number doing something he knows he can do, but at a better salary. So if the whole
damage will he have done along the way?
The whole organisation is doing that.
But to people in the team, to the organisation. And I think, this business of lead yourself first, know yourself, and that requires you to do some work. So for me, I liken the Enlightened Leadership Program to the Iron Man or Woman of leadership. Because it requires you to dig deep and to be brave enough, with lots of support, you're supported throughout the program, to actually take a good look at yourself. And it's really interesting, and I had this conversation with one of my clients on Tuesday. They've got a problem with a member of staff, and ultimately, if you've got a problem with a member of staff or your team or your customers and you're the leader, it's so easy to blame that person. They're not doing it. And I said to this particular, he's an owner, but also works in the business. So actually, who's at fault here? Who's got the power to do something about it? And he went quiet for a moment, and that grin that naughty boys give you at the back of the classroom when they've been caught out, and said, "It's me, isn't it?" And I said, we've talked about setting the expectation and holding people to account. But I use the analogy of house training a puppy. Right. There's a lot of commonalities, I think, in terms of developing behaviours that you want. It's no good telling the puppy off 3 hours after it's made the puddle. You need to watch when they're doing things well, lots of reinforcement. When they're not, to be told at that time in a way that's developmental, and it gives them an opportunity. I'm talking about the staff now, not the puppy. Gives them an opportunity to develop and grow. And if I think back to my time as a head, one of the greatest one of the things I'm really touched and proud of is a member of staff said to me as they left, and they left for a significant promotion, thank you, because even when you were telling me that I wasn't doing it well enough, you did it in a way that made me feel I wanted to be my best self, and you gave me the tools to do it. And I for me, that was a real recognition that what I was wanting to do had worked for that, at least for that person.
And I think sometimes it's a bit like, as going back to the puppy scenarios, if you allow it to happen, you are in control of those rules, boundaries and limitations. And when you're in with your staff and you give them rules, boundaries and limitations, and they have that safe space to create ideas, work within this space for their full potential, then you get more magic from them anyway, don't you? Because they feel capable. And you're allowing them to thrive, but you're allowing them to thrive within an agreed a mutually agreed environment where, well, yes, you can do that, but I don't want you to do that. And it just sets them up for success.
And go back to your appraisal you were talking about a few minutes ago. So many appraisal processes are tick box exercises, which actually are pretty meaningless. Those conversations around performance and whether people are doing what's required and expected of them shouldn't be an appraisal. They should be an ongoing, dynamic, meaningful conversation. But so often the expectations aren't clear, or people say that's not good enough, and the person involved thinks, but I don't know what's not good enough and what does good look like. So having the conversation at a professional level of, you know, what's the difference between okay and good, and the difference between good and excellent in the context of our team or our working environment, and having that professional conversation that's shared can have a huge impact in terms of people's understanding and contribution.
And I think as well, naturally, everybody wants to be acknowledged for something, for working hard and doing their job and going above and beyond. And when I've been working with clients, you know, people say, oh, if I want them to work harder, I'll give them a bonus. Well, that will work for about maybe 3 weeks, you know, and that wears off.
In the level of motivators, I've done a lot of research, it's number one.
And it doesn't
barely down the list.
But when you acknowledge someone and you appreciate them and you value them and you acknowledge them to their peers, whoa, hello, and that creates loyalty to the company, loyalty to the rest of the staff that are working together. It just bonds people together, and that's kind of going back to Collaboration Global. You know, when you've got a safe space that you can be vulnerable, you can get things wrong, that's okay, because you're trying, you're having a go, you're stretching your comfort zone, you're pushing yourself out there a little bit. Didn't quite work that time, I wonder why. Can you help me see if that would make it easier? And it's just bringing things together to be the best that you can possibly be. And I always remember one of our members was kind of accosted at a meeting once. We were at a launch meeting because somebody was launching their brand new business, and we were there supporting them because they'd had the idea at the business at one of our meetings. And it's like, guys, you've got to come and celebrate with me. So we did. And there were his investors and all different sorts of people there. And one of these investors came up feeling very important. And he kind of poked his finger in this one of our members' noses like this. He said, so why are you in this thing then? Why are you part of this thing? And I thought, rude, not a nice way to talk. And she's one of the sweetest, kindest, softest, gentlest people ever. And she just kind of took a step back, got her space, got her personal space, looked up and went, so I can be the best me that I can possibly be. And I thought, well, you kind of nailed that. That was it. And he didn't have anywhere to go with that.
Yeah.
Because he was looking to criticize and to put someone down and to, oh, for goodness sake, you're joking, you're not going to get any business out of this or whatever. But he just, oh, okay, that sounds, what do you do there? And then all of a sudden he was curious about how it went on. And if we build each other up rather than tear each other down, you know, it's like going back to the 1 Minute Manager, Ken Blanchard and the other one, can't remember his name. Google it. It's a very small book, it's a very old book, but the essence of that, when I first read it, was, well, that's obvious, doesn't everybody do that? And it's about how you deal with your member of staff. You say, this is fantastic, this is amazing, but you really could do with a little bit of improvement here, but I love what you're doing over here. So they're hearing the praise and wanting to get better at the middle thing. So there's 3 bits of praise. But if you go with what you did was ridiculous, you've got to get out of here, go home and think about what you've done, this is, well, whatever good they've done is negated. It's like it's invisible.
For me, there are a couple of things. One is I've been into organisations where they call it, I'm going to be very, very unladylike, they call it the shit sandwich.
Yes.
And for me, it's very, what's the word I want? It's become a structure that's been abused. And for me, I think that actually it's all about relationships. And if you've got a relationship which is based on trust and mutual respect, one where you value that person for their contribution, whatever their role is within the organisation, whether they're the cleaner or they're the financial director, they have an important part to play.
Yes.
that it's perfectly acceptable when, if you have set the expectation and that's been agreed on, to say, do you know what, I don't think that matches. I think you're better than that, and I want your best. So I don't accept that from you because I know that you are capable of so much more. But I think the danger is that people don't, for me, that you set the expectation at the advert, in the interview, in the induction, in the ongoing daily conversations, in the training. But so many people say, well, I inducted them and I told them, and they think it's done.
Yes. Yeah.
So I'll give you an example of something that was really helpful for me when I was appointing people at school. I would, before we started the interview, I would say to them, really pleased to see you. This is a two-way process, and it's just as important that we're the right place for you as you are the right person for us. So if you want to be part of this school, all right, we expect you to be hardworking. We don't do moody. We do expect you to be a great team member and to be keen to help other people to grow. No best boys and girls in the class. Leave your ego at home. So you have an opportunity now. If this is not the place for you, then I wish you well, off you go. Nobody ever went. But when they were appointed, and inevitably there would be a time when they were moody or they weren't being a good team member, I would go and very quietly say to them, do you remember the interview? We talked about we don't do moody here. What I've noticed is the last 2 Monday mornings you've come in, I suspect you might have had a really good weekend. And actually you've been grumpy. So, do you remember? It's not acceptable. When you come in here, leave that at the door. Now, that doesn't mean to say if people had a personal challenge and problem that we weren't very understanding and supportive. They're two different things, and I think we'll often get them mixed up. But ultimately, the big thing is, as a leader, you have to model the behaviours that you want people. So it was no good me saying we don't do moody if I was moody or I lost my temper, or I had to make sure that I managed things very effectively within the parameters that I'd set. I'd like to give you another example of how this worked. My school was in Romford. Those who perhaps listening to this will know that Romford's not an easy area. It's inherently quite aggressive. And when I went to the school, and certainly the previous school that I taught at, it was very common for children and parents to be quite aggressive. Not necessarily so parents would be aggressive at the school gate. When I first took over, I often had to act as referee. And I decided that one of the things I wanted for this school was it to have a zero tolerance of aggression within the school site. Now, that doesn't mean aggression didn't happen, but we didn't ever tolerate it. But what I recognized is if that was going to be the case, then every member of staff, from me to the part-time cleaner, needed to have the skills so that if they were put in a situation, they did not fight fire with fire. Now, bearing in mind that when I inherited the school, there was a lady on the staff called the Welsh Dragon who put her foot through the floorboards in temper. You can appreciate that it was actually a little bit of a challenge.
So she was probably perpetuating some of the anger with the parents as well as the pupils, wasn't she?
That was turned around and there was a different scenario, but I provided training for everybody on the staff in terms of emotional intelligence, managing their emotions, managing their mood, diffusing difficult situations, and knowing that they had absolute backup, that it wasn't about them backing down, it was about them handling things in a very different way. As a result, within a relatively short space of time, everybody could say to a child who was being aggressive or bullying, we don't do that. You don't see any of us treating people with a lack of respect. You don't see any of us being aggressive. We don't expect it from you. And we could say the same to parents. Now, did it mean there was never any aggression? No, it didn't. But it meant that we could manage it in a very different way than we would have done if that shared understanding and shared training had taken place.
Yeah, it's demonstrating respect and walking the talk, isn't it? And showing how this is how we behave here, and it's
really important. And you know, for people coming to Collaboration Global who have historically gone to other meetings or work in an environment where aggression is, for example, or people showing a lack of tolerance or respect or talking over one another or whatever, they can come into an environment where what is demonstrated at every level is people who are caring. Doesn't mean they don't disagree, but they do it in a respectful and compassionate and tolerant way.
Yeah, it's paying that respect by listening. It's by, you know, I will give you my time by listening to what you have to say. I don't have to agree with it, and it's not listening with the intent to reply. It's listening with okay, I don't understand. Explain it again. I'm not sure if I agree with. Tell me a bit. You know, and it's really working and pulling at. So we take it as it's our responsibility by being the listener to help yourself. And if you don't understand, you ask the right questions, and you ask so you can actually get it. But you know, the old classic is if you're pointing a finger at somebody else and having a then there's three fingers pointing back at you. It's like, well, hang on, why are you being so upset or so aggressive or so not out of order? But it's just, you know, when, like, I think I've said this before, when we had the Brexit conversation and there were people that were very upset about Brexit, but we still had a debate around it was the day after the Brexit vote, and we still had that conversation around, you know, whether, and I was like, oh, this could kick off. I know we're normally very nicey here, but I wonder how it's going to go. But everybody paid each other due respect, and it was emotional, and there were tears because people were very upset the way the vote had gone, and there were fors and there were againsts, Remainers and Leavers, but by the end of it there was this huge respect for, I didn't think of it like that, I never saw it in that way, and thank you, I didn't even know that. That's really interesting to let me know. I'm not changing my mind, but I see it from a different perspective now. And that's all you can ask for, people to listen powerfully, so that you can really take something on board. And whenever we learn stuff about ourselves, it's because the people in the audience have as much responsibility to take the learning as it is the person at the front of the room that's from what they're sharing. And that learning comes from the odd quip out of the back of the room, and somebody said something and you'd be like, oh my goodness, I didn't even think about it before. And when we did have the Essex meetings, we used to there was one particular chap, and we'd have a little summary at the end of, you know, what did you get out of it? And I look at my notes and go, yeah. And then somebody would sum up and I'm like, I never saw it that way. Wow, I'm going to write that down. So even though at the actual meeting I'd sat there and gone, yeah, I know that, and you go into automatic pilot of, yeah, I've done that before, and you know, it's this kind of, okay, I get it. But if you sit there with okay, so I've heard it before, what else can I take from it? What else can I get? And this other chap, he's an accountant, but he would listen so carefully that when he did a mini resume of what he got out of it, I'd be like, wow, I hadn't even, brilliant. And then I would get something from it as well. So it is our responsibility to hear what people are saying and not necessarily read between the lines and make up a story about it, but to actually take value for ourselves. And what does it mean to me? And
I think one of the things that perhaps we haven't talked about, which is important, is that it's not just about the face-to-face meetings.
Yes.
There's lots going on. There's lots of opportunities for support in a whole range of different arenas that continue to sort of hold the meetings together. They're almost like the jewels in a necklace. That beads, there's lots of beads connecting those things.
Yeah. And what I love is that the members will meet outside of the meetings anyway, so they have one-to-ones to find out about each other. But the Academy is a great place for people to kind of hang out. We have Q&A sessions, the 10-minute teach, you know, we're ratifying some of those and putting them into courses and things. So the levels of the orientation, I mean, what's lovely, if somebody new joins and they have an orientation to find out, well, there's this and there's this and there's this, and quite often it's like, well, there's so much going on. But quite often another experienced member will sit in on that, and they will answer some of the questions that, you know, I sit there and I kind of, well, I know everything. Why doesn't everyone else know everything? And then the member will come in and go, yeah, I wondered that when I first joined. And so what I used to do was, and they will help the new member along the way. So there is so much that the potential for growing. And when I say connect, collaborate, grow, it's connect to yourself as well as to others. It's connecting to your true purpose and who you are and what you want. And that's what I love about where you're going, is that you've connected to your true purpose, not because of the journey, but in spite of the journey. I think your true purpose has always been there. I think your true purpose is to go out there and teach people and support people and help people and love people in that way. And you've been hindered along the way, having to learn to walk again twice. Is like, whoever says that? I mean, it's a statement that and the pain that you've told me that you've been in the past, and the drugs and the treatment that you've had to endure, means that your purpose could have gone out the window, and you could have gone, oh, poor me, I feel very sorry for myself. I'm just going to have disability allowance and I'll have a very humble life and I'll sit and I'll watch daytime TV. That wasn't even a consideration. You were like, oh God, I don't want to watch daytime TV. It was like, let me get out there, because your purpose was burning so strong that you knew you had to get out there. And the fact that you're now putting yourself in a position where globally any potential leader that wants to do the best they possibly can just look at those courses, and that Enlightened Leadership course that you're beginning to let the world know about. And it's like, tick that box, that I'll have that. And it will transform people, because your knowledge and your experience of what you've gone through is immense. And you're not coming from an ego-based space with the, look at me, this is what I've done to my business. It's, I've got, 7-figure business, and there's none of that ego-driven, watch me do what I do scenario, because it is about the whole, if you're helping somebody else, then they're going to help lots of other people, and you're going to reach your million. I think 1 million is going to be done in the blink of an eye. I think you'll be helping millions of people in what they do.
You talked about my big, audacious, hairy dream. And actually the mission is the start of it, really. My plan is that as the leadership program takes off, I want a program for young people.
Yeah. I
think that the number of young people who are suffering from mental ill health is just scary.
Devastating.
I'm a governor at the local sixth form college, and they talk about now over a third of the youngsters report that they are depressed, anxious, they're self-harming. Not all of them, but that they have a problem with how they feel. And I think the simple answer that is offered to them is to go onto drugs, which we know don't work, particularly for people with young people. I mean, there's some research now that shows that their brains aren't fully formed till about 25, and then actually these drugs don't help them. My concern is they're not learning to be resilient.
Yeah.
They're not learning to cope with life, and life is really difficult. And if those mental health issues become established, then they are likely to suffer for their lifetime.
Forever, yeah.
So, but I also want to create a program for parents, because so many parents are struggling to know what to do with their children, and how do you manage social media, and how do you learn to have the confidence to say, your friends may be going or doing that, but in this family, actually,
yeah,
I love you too much. And my plan is that people who become enlightened leaders will act as mentors in social development opportunities on the programs, and that they will continue to meet so that we can keep raising the bar. Because where we are now in our levels of consciousness, and those of you that speak in our vibrational beings, we need that to be raised. We need to stop having a society that's based on Johann Hari talks about junk values.
Yes.
Your importance is based on your bank balance or whether you wear designer clothes. Your status is based on whether you're a celebrity or no matter what you're a celebrity for. And people who are making huge contributions are are not seen.
Yeah.
And the answer has to be in all of our hands.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that we're on a very similar journey in that one of the things I've always envisaged is that we have a collaboration global meeting, a face-to-face, give you a hug, let's get together and make a difference and make an impact for our society. But there's one of these meetings in every town in the country, in the world. But then the people from that meeting then go into schools and teach them how to have their own collaboration global meeting. So we're empowering our young people to understand, what are your values? Let's discover what your values are. Let's borrow ours for the time being, if that would fit for what you're trying to do, and find your purpose and find your genius and work out what you're really good at. And don't get yourself sausage machined into the, I pass that exam, I pass that exam, I pass that exam, and then I do that job that is going to give me some money, but actually I'm dreaming about doing that over there, which is their original talent or their genius. So, you know, I can see what you're talking about is to have people that have become enlightened leaders. We think about leaders as in the workplace, but I think what you're talking about is every person should be their own leader.
Yeah, I think I said earlier that, you know, we're the common denominator that we take into every moment of every day, from the moment we're conceived until we die. It's our choice. Everything we do or not, how we do it or not, when we do it or not, everything we say, how we think, even how we feel, is our choice. But every choice has consequences. And it's my experience and the experience of my clients that when we don't consciously make a decision, that often that's when the consequences are the greatest, and usually negative. You know, when we just drift along and let other people decide for us, and, you know, he made me unhappy, she made me cross.
Yes.
We're giving that power to the other person.
Yeah.
When we take that power and take radical responsibility for our choices, the freedom that brings at an individual level, and then in terms of how that spreads, is just enormous.
I think you said about, you know, if you're not making the choices, you're just jogging along. You feel like that's the easy option. It's like, I can't think about it, I'm not going to bother, I'll just let go with the flow. But actually that's the harder route, the harder road to take, isn't it? When you're being in control of, not in control as in a restrictive space, but having the freedom to make your choices powerfully, and then everything becomes easier.
I need to make the distinction. This is not about having OCD and wanting to be controlling.
No.
It's very different. It is about recognizing that we have mastery over ourselves if we choose to. That we aren't broken.
No.
That we actually are enough as we are. That doesn't mean that there aren't places and ways within our the way in which we operate to improve. But the person who truly has a great relationship with themselves doesn't need to self-medicate with food, alcohol, drugs, shopping, sex, work. The person who believes in themselves will listen to other people's opinion, but they're not going to be defined by somebody else saying, what, you're going to do that? Nah, you'll never succeed. Because if you look at the people who truly succeed in life, the difference between them and everybody else is not that they're superhuman. They do feel fear, but they fear the outcome of not giving it a go more than they fear failure.
And again, when you listen to what everybody says, and you listen to advice, and you listen to support, and you listen to and then choose. And you can choose to not listen to what you've just, you know, and not take any action on what you just heard.
It's important. If, you know, somebody, for example, if a parent says to you, you know, you're saying you want to do this, whatever that might be, but actually you've given everything that you've done so far, as soon as it's got tricky, you've given up, then it's important to listen and think, actually, if I am going to do this, I need to do this with a different approach. I'm not going to sabotage myself when things get tricky. I'm going to power through. So it is important to listen and to take on board what is the truth, but at the same time not be restricted by
it's hearing the what is going to be what's going to enhance who you are and what you do, and feed you. what's going to feed you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Mm. Wow. Well, listen, just looked at the clock and we've an hour has just flashed by practically. So in conclusion, Gina, what are your, if somebody wanted to contact you, what's the best way to do it? How to get hold of you?
Right. If they're interested in the leadership program, the website is the usual HTTPS and that stuff, enlightenedleadership.co.co, enlightenedleadership.co. If they're interested in the broader part of my work, and there's lots of free resources, and there's a membership program for people who want to be with like-minded people and to be seen and heard. That's the Thrive Tribe. There is a personal spiritual development program called Thriving Not Surviving, which you get free if you're part of the membership program. And there's loads of free stuff, free TV series, there's a free happiness challenge, free copy of Thriving Not Surviving, digital copy. Go to genuinely-u.com. That's genuinely-u.com. People can find me on LinkedIn, either under Gina Gardiner or Gina Gardiner Associates, or under Genuinely You. So love to hear from people, and if they're interested in being a participant or an affiliate for Genuinely You or any of the programs, then please do get in touch.
That's fabulous. Thank you. And I think any organisation or any business that is just curious about, well, what is this Enlightened Leadership Program, is, you know, give Gina a call, drop her a line. Is it Gina@genuinelyu.co?
Gina@genuinely-u.com or info@genuinely-u.com.
Yeah. Just get in touch, because there's so much that she can tell you just over a phone conversation. But if you have got any wish to grow as an organization, any issues that, you know, life isn't running smoothly as you had hoped, maybe you're not making as much profit as you'd anticipated, is that down to the people in your organization? Is that down to where your values are, what your purpose is? Enlightened Leadership is going to help you in all of that. And maybe even if you've got a large family and you think, well, I'm actually a leader of this clan and this is driving me nuts, you know, there are so many ways that leadership can be perceived, and it sounds like a fantastic program, and I'm really pleased to have you part of the Collaboration Global family. For the things that you share for us, Gina, is amazing. We've got a meeting coming up with you shortly where you're going to be sharing in our Evolve session.
Yes.
Which is in Hertford next month, which is the 12th of March. And then I think in May in London, if I'm not mistaken, but we'll put details out there as well. So if you're interested in Collaboration Global and you fancy coming along, go to collaborationglobal.org, O-R-G, and then that's the website, and that will give you all the information about the meetings, about the online platform, and about the academy as well. And thank you again, Gina. It's been fantastic having you with me today. So much information. I feel like I've got to go back and make some more notes on all of that. It's brilliant.
It's my absolute pleasure. Thank you very much.
Lovely.
And to anybody who's considering, I would say, go and give it a go. You've got nothing to lose. I think you've got everything to gain. So thanks for having me on. I really do appreciate it.
Cheers. We'll see you next time. Thanks very much.
Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye.